The incredible images from the Inouye Solar Telescope. Let's talk about the SpaceX crash into the moon. The first evidence for an atmosphere on a rocky exoplanet. This is a big deal. Welcome to Night Sky News for August 2026 with me, astrophysicist Dr. Becky Smethurst. In this episode, we're chatting all about the discovery of a rocky planet in the habitable zone around its star that's been confirmed to have an atmosphere. Plus, what we can learn from those incredibly detailed images of the surface of the sun that were released earlier this month, and why the SpaceX junk that crashed into the moon wasn't exciting or something to celebrate, and of course, all the prep for the imminent launch of the Roman Space Telescope, NASA's next big flagship observatory. There's chapter markers down here if you want to skip ahead to any specific news story, plus any scientific research papers I mention are all going to be linked in the video description down below, free to read. But before we get to the latest space news, as always, let's kick things off with a quick look at what we can see in the night sky in the next few weeks, which this month I filmed from the top of a hill in Oxfordshire after watching the partial solar eclipse.
I think this time of year is my favourite time for stargazing. Late August into early September, when the nights are getting longer, but it's still mild towards the end of summer, so you're not getting too cold. And you've still got a fairly good view of the denser part of the Milky Way up here in the Northern Hemisphere. Plus, if I'm awake early enough, I love catching my first glimpse of Orion back in our early morning skies just before dawn. Speaking of being up early, Jupiter is also coming back to the early morning skies as well as we go through the rest of August and into September. It's one of the brightest things in the night sky after the moon, so you should be able to spot it fairly easily in the glow of the sunrise towards the east. But if you can't, don't worry, because my beloved toenail moon will act as a signpost for where to look, swinging past on the 8th and 9th of September in the early morning. If you don't want to be up that early, and I don't blame you if you don't, then try looking out for Saturn instead. It's rising a few hours after sunset at the minute, and it's around most of the night with its yellowish tinge. This one is harder to spot than Jupiter. It's further away, so it's fainter, but again, the moon will act as a signpost when it sweeps past on the 30th of August. Speaking of the full moon, this month we have a partial lunar eclipse on the night of the 27th of August going into the morning of the 28th of August that's visible for the UK and Europe, Africa and America. Eclipses come in pairs, so this is the one that's following the total solar eclipse that we had back on the 12th of August. On that day, the alignment was right for the moon to block the sun, which means that 2 weeks later, the alignment is also right for the Earth to block the moon and cast a shadow onto its surface. So the moon will turn reddish as it passes into Earth's fuzzy sunset shadow. I'll pop a link in the video description down below so you can look up the timing for when the eclipse will start for you. Here in the UK, for example, the eclipse starts around 2:30 in the morning on the 28th, with the maximum just after 5 a.m. before the moon sets an hour later. So if you're up that early and it's clear on the western horizon where you usually watch the sunset, then you're going to have a spectacular view. It'll be a slightly orangey moon with a bit of the Earth's shadow cast on it, really low down in the sky. That means the moon illusion will be really strong, making the moon appear bigger than it is to our eyes, because we have nearby things like buildings and trees to compare it to, which makes it appear bigger because we know how big buildings and trees are. It's not that the moon actually is bigger on the horizon. But what it is a perfect recipe for some astrophotography shots, so give it a go if you fancy it. And if you do snap any pictures of the night sky, then send them my way because I'd always love to see them. Anything from beginner iPhone shots to your first attempt at a deep sky object to I can do this in my sleep because I'm a pro. I'd love to see them all. I didn't try and capture the eclipse myself. I just sat back and enjoyed the whole experience. Yes, the eclipse glasses are great, but as usual, my favourite way to view it was still with a colander. Cracking out the colander to watch the eclipse. Check it out. So cool. Look at those adorable little crescent suns. How cute are they? Adorable. I'm so happy every time this works. I'm hoping that I will finally get to experience totality and a total solar eclipse next year for the great eclipse of 2027. But this year, me and my husband made a night of it. We had a picnic and just enjoyed the digital disconnect for a while. I cannot encourage you enough to do this yourself with friends, family, a big group of people. It is free, it is spectacular, and it's well worth the drive to get somewhere dark to enjoy the wonders of the night sky. So, that's enough of waxing lyrical about the night sky for this month. Let's now come back down to Earth and chat about what's been happening in space news in the past month.
Alright, we have just heard about the eclipse, so let's stick on the topic of the sun and the moon for a little bit and chat about the sun first of all, and the incredible images from the Inouye Solar Telescope showing the surface of the sun in the most detail we have ever seen, which revealed a long suspected phenomena on the surface of the sun, the results of which were published by Stargazing collaborators this month. So the Inouye Solar Telescope is the largest solar telescope in the world. It's 4 meters across and it's designed specifically to look at the incredibly bright light of the sun and not just completely melt when you focus all of the light of the sun down onto its sensitive detectors. Now, we saw some of the first images from the telescope back in 2020 showing how the sun's surface is almost granular, like lots of little cells all intersecting. I say little, but each of those cells is about the size of Texas. The bright bits is where hot material is rising and the dark bits is where cooler material is infalling again. And if you zoom in again on the edges of those cells, pushing the telescope to the limits of what it's capable of, then you get the image that's been released this month, along with a time lapse of images, each taken with an exposure time of just 100 microseconds because of how bright the sun is. And the really cool thing that these images reveal are those little vortices on the edges of the cells where hot material is interacting with colder material. Now, these vortices are called Kelvin-Helmholtz instabilities. They're named after two 19th century physicists who predicted this would happen when two fluids slide past each other at different speeds. The friction between them rolls them into these spiraling vortex patterns. Now, this shows up for us here on Earth most often in the shapes of clouds, and it's always so much fun when you spot this happening. But we can also see it in Jupiter's atmosphere too, and Saturn's atmosphere. And so it's long been predicted that it would also happen on the surface of the sun, and thanks to the Inouye telescope, we now have evidence for it. Which, yes, looks absolutely mesmerizingly beautiful, but also, Stargazing collaborators noted how these shapes align with the dense part of the sun's magnetic field as well, which means the edges of these cells with their movement and spiraling can cause the sun's magnetic field lines to get tangled and play a part in building up the energy needed for solar flares and coronal mass ejections. These are the things that produce the aurora, or the northern lights, when they hit into Earth's magnetic field. But they also pose a threat to satellites and power grids here on Earth, at least in very strong flare cases. So it's definitely in our best interest to understand these better so we can mitigate the risk. So these are not just some pretty pictures, but some important science too. Moving from the sun to the moon, let's talk about the SpaceX crash into the moon. Because I couldn't believe how much positive coverage this had in the media. I got phoned by a load of news outlets being like, oh, can we get you on to talk about how exciting this is? And could you even get up early to record your live reaction to this happening? No! First of all, this wasn't visible to the naked eye at all. I know that this video was making the rounds online. It's very, very clearly fake. No one got footage of this happening. For example, one of the largest telescopes in the world, the Very Large Telescope in Chile, saw this. And it's not even a picture, it's just a spectrum. It's a brief flash of the specific glow from sodium and lithium around the time of the impact. The sodium was likely from a puff of lunar soil that was thrown up in the impact, whereas the lithium was most likely from the rocket itself. South Korea's satellite in orbit around the moon, Inouye, captured a before and after of the moon's surface. Can you see it? That tiny little dark streak? If you keep zooming in, if you squint, there it is. So yeah, not visible from the ground, either with your eyes or with amateur telescopes. And it also wasn't exciting. Can we just call it what it was? It's littering in space. Now, this has happened before where something human-made has crashed into the moon, either accidentally, like in this scenario, or on purpose for scientific experiments. This SpaceX Falcon 9 upper stage launched something back in January 2025. It drifted in an unstable orbit and then crashed unintentionally. So if anything, I think this just highlights how our current practices in the space sector are just really irresponsible. And if we want to keep launching things into space, whether it is telescopes or put satellites into orbit, or whether it's to put a base on the moon in the future, then we have got to clear up our space junk. And yes, this is part of a bigger problem as a whole, but maybe we should start also thinking about not just yeeting boosters and upper stages out into space and hoping for the best. Maybe we should start thinking about plans to reuse them. Like, for example, with SpaceX's Falcon Heavy rocket, parts of which are returned to Earth rather spectacularly, which is the rocket that later this month will be launching the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope, hopefully, if all goes to plan anyway, on the 30th of August 2026, which is 9 months of the original schedule. Now, this is NASA's next big flagship observatory. It's like the successor to the Hubble Space Telescope, and if all goes to plan, it will launch from Cape Canaveral early morning local time, around about noonish here in the UK. After launch, it will then take around 100 days to travel 1.5 million kilometers away from Earth to a region of space called L2, where the gravitational pull from both the Sun and the Earth is balanced in a way that Roman can maintain like an efficient, stable orbit. It's also where JWST is hanging out as well. Orbiting at L2 comes with pros and cons. It's too far away for us to service it if anything goes wrong, same as we had with JWST, unlike with Hubble, which is in low Earth orbit that could be serviced in the early 90s when stuff did go wrong. But then you also have to contend with Earth getting in the way of a lot of the objects that you want to observe. So there's a lot of like logistical constraints when it comes to observing with Hubble that you just don't get at L2. So that's why they're sending Roman to L2. So I'll have just an unobstructed view of the universe. So once it gets to L2 in around about December, that's when all of the commissioning and calibrations will start, hopefully leading to first light from the telescope in early 2027. Although if Roman is anything like the Webb telescope, we could end up with a little sneak peek before Christmas if we're lucky. Its primary mission is slated to last 5 years, but if all things go well with the launch and there's fuel left over, then it could be twice as long. Roman will be scanning our skies with its multiple surveys for the birth of supermassive black holes, for thousands of exoplanets, and mapping dark matter and dark energy in unmatched detail. To find out more about why you should get excited about Roman, I've got one video about the telescope itself and one video about the discoveries we hope will come from Roman. So check those out, I'll link them both down below for you. Speaking of discoveries, let's move on now to the big discovery this month from Cherubim and collaborators, who have claimed the first evidence for an atmosphere on a rocky exoplanet. And this is a big deal for a few reasons. First, because we've found atmospheres on exoplanets before, but they've been on big gas giant planets like Jupiter, not rocky planets. That's mostly due to the fact that it's really difficult to do this. Rocky planets are much smaller, so the light from their atmospheres is just swamped by their starlight. So that's led to people studying rocky planets around smaller stars like red dwarfs, just to try and reduce that contrast between the light from the star and the light reflected off the planet. Problem is, red dwarfs throw off a load of high energy radiation, which if it hits into a planet's atmosphere can give the gas a load of energy so that it escapes into space. So before this, we didn't know if exoplanets orbiting red dwarfs could actually hold on to atmospheres for billions of years or not. It's why everyone has been so sad about the negative results from JWST on the TRAPPIST-1 system, a system of 7 rocky planets orbiting a red dwarf star, where there's been no detections of atmospheres so far. So this result from Cherubim and collaborators is exciting because it's shown that it is actually possible for exoplanets orbiting red dwarf stars to hold on to their atmospheres for a long time. Because the planet they've discovered having this atmosphere is orbiting a star LHS 1140, which is over 3 billion years old. Now, the planet itself was actually discovered back in 2017 by Dittman and collaborators, so we've known about it for a while. It's 5.6 times heavier than Earth and 1.7 times as wide as Earth, and takes around 25 days to orbit its star. So it orbits much closer into its star than the Earth does around the Sun. But because its star is that much smaller and cooler than the Sun, it means that it only gets around about 42% of the starlight that Earth does. That still puts it in its habitable zone, where it's not too hot or cold for liquid water to exist. So you can probably tell why this exoplanet was of great interest to people as a potential like Earth-like system, which is why Cherubim and collaborators used one of the Magellan telescopes in the Atacama Desert in Chile to get a spectrum of this planet's atmosphere. So what they did was that they waited for the planet to pass in front of its star from our perspective, and they compared the light from before and during the planet's transit, took one away from the other, and were left with the impact that the atmosphere left on the starlight, with the fingerprints of certain molecules absorbing specific colours or wavelengths of light to show that they were there in the atmosphere. So that's what this plot shows. On the horizontal axis, you've got wavelength of light, aka the colour of the light, and on the vertical axis, you've got the amount of absorption that happened. The black points show the amount of light that's been absorbed after it's passed through the planet's atmosphere, and you can see this big dip in the light at the wavelength that helium absorbs at, which is shown by the solid blue lines. It's a really clear signal and it's very cool to see. But what you can also see is that that absorption signature isn't actually even, and it's offset slightly from the blue line, which shows where the absorption of helium should be when the helium is at rest, when it's not moving. So Cherubim and collaborators interpret this as helium gas escaping this planet's atmosphere. Something that also seems time dependent as well, because the signal is not there in similar data they got a year later in 2025. Now that's not that crazy of an idea either. This kind of like helium escape from atmospheres happens on Earth and in other planets' atmospheres as well. Famously, helium is a very light gas, which is why when you let go of helium balloons, they fly away. So similarly, helium in an atmosphere does tend to rise to the top of the atmosphere as well, where it can then start leaking out into space. So a really exciting discovery to have the first claim of a rocky exoplanet in the habitable zone that has an atmosphere, and on top of that, it's orbiting a red dwarf star too. Because that now opens up lots of possibilities for the potential habitability of a lot of other exoplanets that are also orbiting red dwarf stars in the habitable zone. So I don't think this is the last we'll hear of LHS 1140b either, because it's one of the current selected targets under the Rocky Worlds program as well, which is using both the James Webb Space Telescope and the Hubble Space Telescope to try and find evidence of atmospheres on rocky exoplanets orbiting red dwarf stars. So make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss out on any updates about that or on LHS 1140b. And if the thought of all these discoveries and future science happening excites you, and you're thinking of starting down this path of becoming a scientist, or perhaps you're a parent with a kid who wants to be a scientist when they're older, and you're wondering what's the best way to get a jump start on all of the knowledge that I'm gonna need to know to become a scientist, well, research has shown time and time again the best way to do this is with one-on-one tutoring. But let's face it, for most families, finding a good tutor, paying that tutor, and also making the scheduling work, it's just not realistic. I didn't have that when I was a kid, and I know I spent hours stuck on problems with just no one to ask for help. But that's what Brilliant have built with their AI tutor, Koji. Koji doesn't give you the answer when you're stuck on one of their courses, it asks questions and it walks you through it, just like a real one-on-one tutor would. Koji gives you a clue to help by pointing or sketching and stays right there with you through every learning course you take. I need some help.
Let's work through this together. The truck starts at the top left and moves east first. How many blocks east does it need to go to reach that first package?
I really wish this had existed when I was a student. So if you've got a kid, or you are a kid that's in grade 5 through college, you should definitely get them to give Brilliant's courses a try to see how much they learn and where in life it will take them. Click the link below or scan the QR code on screen to get started with Brilliant's tutor for free. You can then upgrade to premium to unlock all the courses, and at the minute, viewers of my channel can also get 20% off an annual subscription by heading to brilliant.org/Dr. Becky. So a big thanks to Brilliant for sponsoring this video, and that means that is it for Night Sky News for this month. Do not forget to watch the Roman Space Telescope launch on the 30th of August. And as always, if you snap any pictures of the night sky, or if you see any space news stories that you want me to explain in a future Night Sky News video, then send them my way over on social media, because I would always love to see them. But until next time, everybody, happy stargazing.
To what, there is a wasp. There is a wasp. Could you please go away, wasp? Oh. And if you do I literally just say a fly. Gross. Plus, if I'm awake early enough, I love catching my first glimpse of Orion. What is that noise? Ugh. This is even worse than filming in the studio. You get everything when you're outside.
Look who came to say hi. No, run away. Your butt can just stay there while I film. Excuse me. Are you scratching? What? What? You're just scrabbling at my desk now? Okay. Pushing the telescope's resolution. Do you mind? What are you doing down there? Are you burrowing under my rock? I don't know what she's doing. Just watching the temperature climb in here while I've filmed. It's now above 27 degrees according to the Galileo thermometer over there. Yay. No wonder Pip doesn't want to be in here anymore. I don't either.